Welcome back, everyone. Across the country, the search for the future location of Amazon's second headquarters, referred to as HQ2, is shrouded in secrecy. And it's not just the public that's being kept in the dark. Even city councils and civic leaders can't find out what tax credits and other perks are included in the bids submitted by cities. Another word for those bids? Bribes. Bribes given with your tax dollars to Jeff Bezos, already the world's richest man. So what can be done to shine a spotlight on what's being offered? Let's ask Good Jobs First Activation Coordinator Scott Klinger, who's been all over this. Scott, thank you so much for joining us. What's your reading of where we are in the hunt for a location for HQ2 and what that means for the residents, the taxpayers of all these cities that are bidding?
Well, thanks for having me, Steve. It means that billions of dollars is up for stake that cities are going to pay to Amazon, and citizens know nothing about where this money is going or what the deal structures are. There's 20 cities that are in the finals for this HQ2, and none of them have yet released their full details. Some of it's quite disturbing. Montgomery County did release their bid to a journalist, and all the pages were completely blacked out with magic marker. So this is, wow. And it's not fair because the tax money that's going to be, that Amazon's not going to have to pay, or Amazon employees might not even have to pay to governments, because Amazon, in some of the bids, gets to keep their employees' state tax withholdings. That money is going to be made up by normal middle-class citizens, by small businesses that will have to cover Amazon's costs for the schools that Amazon employees' children go to, the firefighters that protect homes, the road crews that plow streets and pave potholes. So it's basically a big shift from city services paid for by all of us, and I think the right and left agree that whatever taxes we pay should be fair. And so this is something for all citizens to be concerned about.
I mean, this is classic corporate welfare, isn't it? But I just wanted to just emphasize something you said right at the beginning there. You are talking about billions of dollars, not millions of dollars. These are huge sums, right?
Yeah, the highest bid that we know of at this point is from Maryland, which is about $8.5 billion. But the other thing that's important to say here is that
unbelievable.
It's unbelievable, but the other thing that's unbelievable is money doesn't really matter to Amazon. What Amazon wants to locate is in a city that has talented employees, that has good infrastructure, and that's an enjoyable place to live so they can attract 50,000 people to work there. St. Louis bid over $7 billion and didn't make the cut for the 20 cities. So, you know, and one of the problems is that in the second round here, Amazon has asked cities to sign non-disclosure agreements, but has not agreed to not disclose the city's bids. So they can go to Boston and say, hey, Boston, you know, would you like to have us? Do you know what Austin bid or Miami bid? And kind of use the city's bids against them with other contenders.
It's such a great example of what we talk about all the time, how it's all rigged in favor of these giant corporations and working people just get screwed. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your insights there and for being on this story. And let's talk again when we know who's won and how much they paid. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's bring in
Thank you so much, Steve.
Lisa and Charlie. Charlie, you're really fired up about this.
Yeah, and look, so I'm a fighter for the American taxpayer. People do not realize the corruption that Amazon has within its ranks in the U.S. government. So let's just look at some facts. Bezos has a net worth well over $100 billion. He owns the Washington Post, which is the most feared, political newspaper. Any senator, any congressman, if the Washington Post calls, they immediately, they go up against the wall. So he uses that as a weapon against politicians. And he currently is lobbying for, mind you, a $100 billion contract for the Department of Defense, $10 billion a year annually. Wow. It's called the JEDI contract. Anyone can look it up and see it. And they're using unethical means. Vanity Fair, Reuters, Daily Caller all had stories about it. It was the front page of Drudge last week about how Bezos has hired top-tier lobbyists to try to subsidize the verticalization empire in every part of the American economy. Healthcare, science,
what's he selling
food,
to?
technology,
what's Amazon's
cloud computing. Amazon Web Services, yes. And now, mind you, Amazon loses money in every single vertical except their web services. So he wants the American taxpayers to fork over $10 billion a year, which would make us at a huge security risk, so that he can continue to vertically monopolize all parts of the American economy. This, as American taxpayers, we have to put against it. This is a crony capitalist cartel.
Well, I mean, how do I follow that? Well, what's interesting about this, too, I mean, look, this isn't the first time that, like, a state or city would offer tax incentives to try to bring businesses to the state, right? But I think the reason why this is getting so much attention is because the numbers are so staggering and it's so egregious. I mean, you look at Maryland, I think they've offered something like $8.5 billion. New Jersey was $7 billion. And the only reason we found out about some of this, particularly looking at New Jersey, was because a citizen filed a lawsuit against them trying to disclose some of the details. And what I read in the New York Times, which I found really interesting, is that you've got Chamber of Commerce affiliates and other, economic development groups that are sort of spearheading some of this to shield it from FOIA requests and from public disclosure. However, the flip side of this is Amazon would say, well, hey, you look at a city like Seattle, we're bringing tens of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of jobs, and we're also going to contribute, tens of billions of dollars to the local economy. But I think taxpayers ultimately have a right to know what is being offered that they're going to be on the hook for.
So that they can evaluate whether that equation is worth it, because there have been a lot of studies that show that actually it's all vanity. It doesn't work out. That actually, even if you add up all the jobs and the economic development from that, it doesn't actually match up when you think about the infrastructure that's needed, the schools and the services and all the rest of it. And actually, the final point is, like, why on earth would Amazon, literally this company that's steamrolling everyone else in the economy, need these bribes?
They're laughing all the way to the banks.
All right.
And they use the postal service in very unethical ways.
All right, we could go on all day, but we won't, because we have to move on. Coming up, shocking new details on shady business deals in Joe Biden's family. Peter Schweitzer joins me for a special Swamp Watch you won't want to miss. That's next.